Hello and welcome back to another 3 a.m. production video. This week we're going to be talking about the succulent Temptress, the queen of crime herself, eco-terrorist, botanist, and all-around plant lover, Poison Ivy. Now, this character has changed over the years, as so many comic book characters do. When she first appeared, she was just looking to be the #1 villainess in all of the world. Challenging all the other female supervillains and criminals to a competition to ensnare that #1 spot. It put the dynamic duo at odds because she used her pheromones and chemical compounds to ensnare Batman in a love potion, causing herself to fall in love with Batman. Over the next several years, she would continue that infatuation with Batman, ultimately losing the infatuation in this sense after the post-crisis issues. But seemingly was like your every average day Adam West serial. She just came up with plots and schemes based around plants to steal money and jewels, and not that average from any other criminal. But with her reimagining, they came in with this more elaborate background of her a more traumatic childhood. Kind of estranged from her parents in a social sense. She never really felt like she had anybody to relate to except her plants. So she studied hard and grew up, and she got several degrees and doctorates. Now, the origin can differ depending on which way she takes the route, but sometimes she uses her degrees to go into making perfumes for those perfume companies with exotic fragrances. Other times she goes into botany and studies what happened to Dr. Eric Holland and the accident that caused him to become the Swamp Thing. Her lab partner, Jason Woodrue, would ultimately poison her and cause her to die, but because of being exposed to all of her plant toxins and chemicals over the years, it caused her to transform into the villainess we all know as Poison Ivy. Her infatuation with Batman would then ensue to the fact of he was the only one in Gotham who she couldn't ensnare, so that made him the ultimate prize to beat. But otherwise, her social engagement stayed to that of mostly her BFF Harley Quinn and her plants. When she debuted in the animated series, they made her the love interest to Harvey Dent, although she was secretly just pretending to be his love interest, so she could poison him with her infamous lipstick, because while Harvey Dent's campaign to clean up Gotham was in effect to build a new penitentiary, he accidentally killed a rare rose that was going to go extinct, except for the one that she has now cultivated and saved, that she then used to make the very poison that went into her lipstick. In that episode, ultimately, she kisses Harvey on her way out the door from a date that she had with him to meet his best friend Bruce Wayne, in which he falls face first into his pudding. And then Batman has to figure out what has poisoned his best friend. Her background there is having the education to create fragrances and sometimes guest lecture at the university, where they've given her her own private greenhouse that she's using to cultivate all sorts of rarity of plants. Now, this version of Ivy doesn't come without her past, although we don't get to see it very much in the actual animated series itself. Thanks to the writing Bible that the creators came up with, we know that as a child that there was an incident with a bunch of bullies where a bunch of bullies were picking on Ivy in her personal greenhouse in her backyard, and there was a fire and it destroyed all of her plant friends, founding her on her own personal crusade to not only save plant life, but strong feminism rights as well. In one episode, her and her now newly acquainted, since they first met in this episode, Harley Quinn, she tries to use her own ideology to get Harley away from her abusive, at the time, ex-boyfriend, the Joker. But to show how well educated she is, in one of the last episodes she appears in the original 3 seasons of the animated series, she finds a way to clone herself using plant cells to lead Batman on a wild goose chase of chasing her clone instead of her so she could get away scot-free. But it's seemingly tragic because she used those clones to try to create her own personal family that she thought she could just live out happily ever after with, but was also robbing billionaires blind just to do it. In the New Adventures of Batman, she got a redesign that gave her green skin. They had to explain that redesign in the comics that came out subsequently after the fact, that Ivy had been able to clone herself again And subsequently, that clone had abilities that even she didn't have. So while she was conducting research with Jason Woodrue, somewhere in the Amazon, her clone was seemingly still in Gotham committing crime, but could control plants instead of just manipulating their cellular structure. But nowadays, that's pretty common practice for her character in the comics of being able to control, manipulate plants, control her pheromones, and poison people at whim. The Arkham franchise follows that very basic structure, with the accident giving her the ability to speak to plants and talk to the green, as the DC continuity likes to call it, which is sort of this plant-verse within that all plants talk to each other. Being one of the boss battles in the Arkham Asylum video game, slowly but surely she makes her way through the games, making the ultimate sacrifice in Arkham Knight that leads you to cure the city. Now, seemingly her unselfish sacrifice was for the plants, not necessarily the people, but still very good of her overall. But though her Go Green initiative is a good cause, taking it too far is definitely her MO. From targeting companies that bulldoze rainforests and spraying them with chemicals to turn them into trees, or blanketing Gotham in her own personal forested trove of plants. And with her, as much as looks can kill, she's got the will to back up her insidious plans to blanket all of the world and restore Mother Nature to its original balance, making her one of the most dangerous of Batman's rogues gallery. But all that to say, I hope you've enjoyed our brief summary of Poison Ivy. We'll see you next time.